Okay, I think we can start. So, hi everybody, my name is Itay, and at this session we're going to talk about tech interviews, and in particular, what are the common mistakes that people do when they interview for tech positions. So, I have the experience, I'll tell a bit about myself. I have the experience of probably interviewing more than 1,000 real candidates as part of hiring. I hired people, was part of hiring committees at Google and in other companies. And also I've done many, many, many mock interviews. And there are a couple of repeated patterns that you might fall into. And I think this session would be useful for you. This session is 60 minutes. We have about 20 slides. And I'll tell you first a bit about myself. So I've spent a decade at Google. I left about maybe a month ago, making hiring decisions on hundreds of candidates over time. I've coached hundreds of job seekers into roles at fan companies and beyond. I founded the company, Application Owl, where we do cutting-edge job landing tools. We have a program. We also have in alpha now an AI tool. If you're interested in trying out a new tool, you're welcome to register for the alpha. I've ran a software recruiting firm in the past called TechBee. By the way, this session is recorded. It's going to be available later on YouTube. Many people ask me for that, so I was like, okay. I'm an adjunct professor of computer science at Cal State Fullerton. I teach computer science for graduates. I author of a book called The Job of Landing a Job, and I'm also organizing Gen AI events, premier talks at Southern California. And you can follow me on LinkedIn. So about this webinar, this is going to be about insights from talk job interviews. If you have questions, drop them in the chat. Once in a while, I'll take a look and answer. And there is maybe something like supposed to be 100 attendants. We'll see how many people will join in the end. So the mics and the cameras are off. And as I mentioned, recording will be on the sides. And the slides will be shared in the comments not to the slide, to the video. It's a typo. On youtube.com, Itay Sharfi. Okay, let's start. So, okay. So where are you currently at the job search phase? Are you in a phase where you haven't submitted any applications, or you still don't have recruiter calls? Maybe you had recruiter calls, maybe even talking with the hiring manager, but no interview loops. So that means like a full interview, usually it's about 5 to 6. Maybe no offer, or an offer that's not signed, or maybe you're just coming here to have fun. So if you can share the number of which state are you at the current job search, just that we'll know. Okay, so I see a lot of people are on 3, which means that you are getting to a recruiter call, but potentially not passing into an interview loop, maybe even with the hiring manager. Sometimes the first call is with the hiring manager. So that's good, that might be useful. Okay, let's continue. So when we're talking about interviews, there are a couple of different interviews that you should be aware of, and that's kind of across different jobs. One is behavioral interviews. So those are going to be behavioral questions. Those are the classic ones. Tell me about a time when you overcome a challenge, something along those lines. Or how do you build reports with clients, which is more hypothetical. This is the questions that I think people fall on the most, and it's the easiest to improve. We'll talk about that. Then there are the technical questions. So for the technical questions, there's going to be, usually, this is what sometimes people use, like leet code and things like that. Write a function to find the longest palindrome, something along those lines. Those questions are not very sophisticated. So if you practice and do like patterns, you understand patterns and pattern matching, you probably will do well. And if you haven't practiced, even if you're like a senior engineer, sometimes you'll fall on them. There is the system design questions. I personally love those. Those are the more advanced. They will say things like design a ride-sharing service like Uber, or design like an ad spend blocker, or something along those lines. Those usually ask for maybe more senior people, or maybe more senior people are asking them. Those are maybe harder to prepare, but again, experience helps here, and also just being curious about how things work. Then there are open-ended questions. Open-ended questions like, how would you improve airline onboarding process? This is sometimes in like consulting, they will ask those questions, and they try to see if you can like logically think about a problem. We'll talk a bit about that. And of course, there are the questions in the start to finish. Tell me about yourself, which you'll be surprised how many people kind of fall on. Do you have any questions for me? Those are like the standards. Okay. So let's talk what are the common reasons why candidates fail interviews. Sometimes it's unfortunate is that sometimes people go to interviews and they actually perform their best and they think that they've done quite well. But then when they leave, they realize that maybe something was off, but they're not sure, and that they don't get an interview loop. So what is the reason for that? The first thing to understand is that interviews are not tests. They are pattern recognition, okay? When people invite you to an interview, you fall into a certain pattern, or you're like a platform PM, or you're like a DevOps. You fall into a certain pattern. And they try to evaluate, do you look like someone who succeeded in this role, okay? When the market is good, it's more like, can you succeed in this role? When the market is bad, it's more like, have you succeeded in this role in the past? So it's like a pattern recognition, which means that you can answer a question perfectly, but still not prove that you fall into the pattern, and as a result, not pass the interview. Another thing that I think is a common mistake is that interviews are not about your resume. Because in this market, many positions have 2,000 candidates, right? It's ranging from, if you're like a small startup at like a third-tier city, maybe 300 people applying. If you like, fan company, like large city, easily thousands. Remotes, maybe even more. So what it means is that the fact that it got you in the door, you're already like a top candidate. Otherwise, they would not be calling you for an interview. It means that you actually have a strong chance you can win it. So in the past, they might call to interviews because there are just not enough candidates. Maybe people that are, maybe don't have the right resume, but they're like, yeah, maybe we'll try. At this market, every candidate that usually comes to an interview is a top candidate. And it's important to understand that, because if you can get interviews, you can probably land the role. Now, another thing to understand is that interviewers, usually, especially in large companies, score against rubrics, right? Score against rubrics means that they are usually getting metrics that they should evaluate your answers by. So even if your answer is amazing, but it did not hit on the rubrics, for example, clarity, ownership, process, impact, it highly depends on the role, then really there is no, you're not going to pass. Those rubrics are often provided from above, and sometimes they may be aligned or not aligned with what the interviewer thinks it's important, but that's what they have to follow. Let's continue. They score you against those rubrics. Now, many rejections happen not because you done something wrong, but haven't done something right. So what does it mean? It means there is a signal loss. When you go to an interview, you need to provide certain signals. What does it mean, a signal? A signal means I am creative. A signal means I'm a good person to work with. That's a signal. So what it means is that if you do not provide those signals for those rubrics that you're passing them, then in many cases, you will be rejected. So the the default outcome of an interview is a rejection. So unless something happened in the interview that proved otherwise, it's rejection. And that's something maybe important to understand. Your interview is your opportunity to prove that you're just better than just an average interview that nothing interesting happens in, okay? Because the average interview gets rejected. I think many companies usually call, it depends, so maybe, I don't know, 7 to 20 people to an interview, something along those lines, right? So think about it. The median gets rejected. Now, every question is an opportunity to show how you're fit, even if the question is not about this. So what does it mean? Let's assume that you are a program manager, right? And there is a question. And the question is not actually about program management. It's something about, tell me a time when you received a hard feedback, right? So a hard feedback means there was a story. That story could be about the fact how much experience you have as a program manager, okay? So even if the question doesn't answer, say correctly, tell me you're a great program manager, it's an opportunity to demonstrate a story that demonstrates the fact that you've done great work as program management, okay? Besides the fact that you answer that you were able to receive tough feedback. And the last thing is tell good stories, okay? Sometimes people tune out. A lot of people may not know it, but in many companies, especially big companies, many interviewers are not very excited about going to interview people. It's like a chore, and it's kind of stuck in the middle, and the head is not there. They're trying to do their best, but it's not like you're going to work for them. In many cases, if you want to work for somebody else, they might not even know them. So it's important to understand that telling good stories is important, to have the conversation engaging, to keep that person interested in listening to you and collecting those signals that will say that you're a good candidate. So tell good stories. Also, people in many cases tune out. Maybe they're thinking about something else. So it's important to tell good stories. Now, how interviews actually evaluate you? Rubrics depends on the company, depends on the role, on the level. Also really depends on the interviewers, the interviewer hat that they gave to this person. Are they supposed to evaluate you on analytics or technical skills or whatever they're supposed to evaluate you on? But there are some common things that usually repeat, okay? Communication. Do you explain yourself clearly and concisely? Communication, two problems usually that I see in communication is one, people talk in length without getting to the point. So you can call it maybe brevity, something like that. The second thing that you usually see is they speak in a non-logical way. So when somebody communicates in a non-organized logical way, you assume that person might not think in an organized logical way. And that could hurt that person's chances. The second thing is execution, okay? Can you turn ideas into results? When you're telling stories, can you actually generate result? Or you just you had an idea and maybe you tell that to some people and maybe something happened or didn't happen, okay? Are you like an execution mindset? Technical fluency. Can you architect or articulate solution? This is important in pre-sale, this is important in product management, especially definitely important in engineering and in most roles. Are you a person with a technical attitude? Ownership. This is especially important in senior roles, but also very important in startups when you need people to own things because you just don't have the energy to micromanage them. Did you drive the outcome or just supported it? Are you like proactive or just reactive? We'll talk a bit about that. This, as I mentioned, is also an indication of junior, mid, senior. And business impact, okay? In the end, do your decisions generate business impact? Are you focused on business impact? And do you care about business impact? Do you understand it even? Do you understand how your role aligned with the bigger picture, and were you able to move that bigger picture? So common failing patterns that I see, by the way, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll try and stop and take them every few slides or so. So a couple of common failing patterns that I see. The first thing is using hypothetical instead of real life stories. Every time that somebody is asking you, what would you do if? Because the questions sometimes do not always ask you about the past. They will ask you, oh, how would you handle a situation, right? Or what would you do when the system, something happened to it? Every hypothetical questions should be answered, if possible, with a real example that actually happened. Why? Because otherwise, it's first, it moves you from talking with abstracts. You're talking about real stuff. But the second thing is it helps you to demonstrate your experience. If somebody's asking you, what would you do in a situation where engineering and somebody else disagree on the roadmap? Well, if you've done the role, you probably have an example, right? And past performance is best indicator for future performance. So you're also proving that you can perform. So again, this is a common mistake that people do, answering a hypothetical. The second problem is that you're not clarifying what was the problem being solved. When you're not clarifying what the problem being solved, it's kind of hard to even understand the story, like why you've done all of that. And also you're minimizing yourself from a person who maybe understood the problem, being proactive about it, to somebody who just, I don't know, they just told me to do it. So make sure that you clarify what was the problem. Another thing that happened very commonly, people sometimes they talk in terms of we, and it's unclear what they did. When somebody interviewing you, they're not interviewing your team or your past team, they're interviewing you. When they interview you, it's important to understand that you need to make what you've done distinct from what others people have done, okay? So it's okay when you're setting up, I was part of a team that has done, I don't know, ads optimization. That's okay. But then what was your task in this? What did you do as part of this? So move quickly into what you've done. Another thing that happened commonly is skipping metrics or outcomes, okay? So when you're thinking about what you've done and you're using STAR format, it's a common one. STAR is like situation, what was the situation, what was your task, what you've done, and then what was the result. The result is important to mention because, again, you want to show that you've done your role successfully, and how would anybody know it if there was no result associated with it? Speaking vaguely or leaving out key context, again, something common, then it's hard to track. Another thing is signaling mismatch with the role. I'll give one example. A common example is people that used to be manager. Today, if you don't know, the market is very tough for managers and very tough for junior people, right? Senior people are probably doing okay. So what it means is that if you start to talk in terms of, let's say, I told my team, but you're interviewing as commonly to maybe an IC, an individual contributor, then there is some mismatch here, right? So you want to talk about what you did, because then again, it's an individual contributor role. Coming across as inexperienced or junior, I'll give a few indications on that. Coming across as inexperienced or in junior today is bad. Today, junior roles usually mean a year or 2 years of experience. There are almost no roles today that have zero experience, which is tough for graduates. I see it as a professor at the university where I teach. So it's important to position yourself, of course, based on facts, as somebody that has experience. And the last one is low on likability. I see people like, sometimes it's like bad vibes, being argumentative, it's just one of them, or maybe like being overly conforming, like if people push us on something, you just drop everything and just follow what they said. Sometimes robotic answers, like like they kind of get tense at the interviews, and you need to remember this person needs to want to work with you. So kind of be yourself a bit, be a bit relaxed. I know it's easier said than done, but remember that in the end, likability is an important. And the last thing is when make sure that when you answering the question, of course, you applying to a position, you're applying to a team, make sure it's a position and a team that you like. Now, I have a question for the audience. Let's see if you can say, what do you think makes one look like inexperienced or junior when telling a story? So let's say if I ask you, I'm interviewer, I'm asking you, tell me about a time when your opinion was not accepted and you had to convince people on the product. What makes somebody look inexperienced or junior when telling that story? I'll give it maybe like half a minute, if you can write in the chat. Yes, quantifying the impact, because remember, quantifying the impact means that you understand and oriented regarding the organizational impact. Sure, if you quote an example that's not from a work experience, that means you maybe don't have enough work experience to give examples. Sure, never experienced that situation, or talking in hypothetical. Sure, not basing your arguments on real data, like just this was my opinion. It's kind of a junior approach. Yes, the outcome achievement, lack of clarity. Okay, lots of good answer. Yes, blaming is a symptom of lack of being reflective. That's also a symptom of somebody who's not senior, because in the end, you have to work with people and work needs to be done. Not everybody are perfect, and you have to kind of understand how to work with people. Okay. So there's a couple of things that I see when people tell the story that says that they are maybe more on the junior side. The first thing is handling ambiguity, okay? If your story has no ambiguity in it, somebody told you to do something, that's not really a senior story. If there was an ambiguity and you didn't know what to do, that's not really a senior story. Handling ambiguity, that's probably one of the indications of senior people. Second thing is driving decision. If you didn't drive any decision, you were just executing what you were told to do, then that's not really a senior story. Owning outcome, accountability, right? So many people will say, yeah, and then I said that to management and just waited for what they will tell me to do. That's not really owning the outcome and end to end. Proactiveness means that if something does not work well, you become proactive about this. Customer first, that's another thing, that you're thinking about the customers and the impact, and the ability to dive deep, okay? You understand why this was important. When somebody is asking you to do something, you can understand the context instead of just gonna maybe what was asked. By the way, if you are interviewing for a senior position, one of the benchmarks in the market for what's considered like leadership, it's Amazon leadership principle. There's like 12 of them. I think maybe a bit less are relevant, but it's worth a read. I would say go read it. Many companies today use it, even at Amazon. And then you can evaluate your stories based on that. Okay, some question. Does every story needs to be related to the role applying for, or can it be a story from a totally different role, but it is meaningful? It could be any role, right? Now, of course, the best thing is if you've done the exact same role successfully at a different company, right? But if you haven't, then it could be from a different role. Of course, you have to think when you tell the story, what's the point of it, right? If there was a conflict and you're talking about a conflict and maybe the role was completely unrelated, then maybe that's not the best experience to highlight. Other ways to identify when you can ask the interviewer how much detail they're looking for, or if they can share what they had in mind regarding hypothetical interview scenarios versus clear scenarios. Okay, so this is a good one. The first thing is there are things that you can ask or not ask. If you ask hypothetical or real scenario, I mean, of course, real scenario is usually better as long as it doesn't breach NDA or something like that. I would say when you're not sure, there are two ways to go about that. What I usually like to do is if you're not sure that you're going in the right direction, do two things. First, do not talk in length. Talk for like maybe a minute, minute and a half. And then say, okay, I'm going to make some assumptions here. My assumptions is that you are, let's say if it's like a product question. My assumption is that this product is for the US market, and this product is a new product, and we have to develop it in-house. Does that sound like reasonable assumptions? So when you're making the assumption and ask if it's reasonable assumptions, you kind of appear to be a bit more senior than if you just ask them, hey, is that in the US or not? You can make an assumption, kind of move forward with that, okay? And you can make an assumption to just make your solutions better. The second thing is like you could ask, but I would say when you're asking somebody, usually do not have like an open-ended question. Just say, hey, this is my assumption. Does that sound good? And if not, they're just going to tell you. Okay. So talking about Rubrik's first interview strategy, and I'll give you a few examples. Like, don't think about, when you're answering the question, think about kind of what's the point of this question. So before answering the question, ask yourself, okay, what rubric are they testing here? Okay, like what is the point of this question? Or what can I highlight in this question that will help them evaluate rubrics that make sense? When you come into an interview, you should know what are the dimensions that they are going to evaluate you by, okay? You can do this research in advance. Think about, okay, what are they evaluating me by? Are they evaluating me? I'll give you an example, okay? Let's say you're going in for pre-sales. Okay, pre-sales is somebody that tags along, maybe is part of like the team that tries to do maybe proof of concept. What are they going to evaluate you by? They're going to evaluate you maybe by your ability to talk with clients, maybe by technical capabilities, maybe by your ability to quickly find out like which systems are there. Like what are they even going to evaluate you by? Okay, what makes a good pre-sales? If you know this, it's actually very easy to answer well. Because if you know this and it's always like in the back of your mind, when you're answering the question, just answer with examples that are relevant for what they're looking for. By the way, everything that I said so far, you still answer with the truth. The only thing is, what do you choose to say that is relevant for the position? For example, I've been a manager in my past. I've also been an individual contributor. If the role has nothing to do with management, it's not going to be something that I'm going to talk in length because it's just irrelevant. Okay. So I'll try and give an example that's not management because it's just not relevant. So before answering the question, thinking what rubrics are they testing here? What outcomes or belief they're trying to confirm? Okay. I was just giving an example with pre-sales. How can I reverse engineer my answer to focus on that belief, right? So what it means is that if the question you think aims to check how you're doing program management processes, that's what you're going to highlight, okay? That's what your answer is going to be focused on, okay? You're going to tell a story that's relevant for what they're trying to evaluate, and not tell a story that's not relevant. Relevancy is like the cheat code here. Just say something that's relevant. For example, let's take a sales engineer, like a pre-sales role, okay? They might ask you a common one, right? This is like, how do you build trust with a client? Why? Because clients need to trust you to buy, basically. So how do you build trust with the client? Okay. What rubrics here do you think they're being evaluated? Okay, in this question. How can you reverse engineer your answer to focus and emphasize what matters most here? Okay, so I'll give you maybe thinking about it, maybe half a minute or so. You can write in the chat. How do you build trust with the clients? What are they trying to evaluate here? What rubrics will your answer be judged by? Because remember, if you have this in the back of your head, it's actually not that difficult to answer. Yes, empathy for customer, that's correct. Empathy, you can understanding this other person's point of view, critical if you're trying to sell. Problem solving, yes. Speak with authority, be reluctant to have. I was trusted many roles because of it. Find what you both have in common. Get them to like you. Now, this is important, and I see it already in the answer. Show an understanding of the customer's business needs and prioritizing that over your objective. There is tactics and there is rubrics, right? Tactics is how you've done it. Rubrics is like what's been evaluated. So let's say communication skill. There are many ways to do good communication skill, but the quality of your communication skill is what's going to be evaluated. So when you answer and thinking, is this a quality communication skill or a low quality communication skill? Okay. So for example, this is maybe my thoughts when you're thinking about how do you build trust with the clients. Some of the rubrics that are likely tested would be like communication. Can you explain technical concept clearly and adjust to your audience? Because pre-sales is technical. Can you, like the solution side, can you explain technical concept? So that's something you will be evaluating when they will ask you questions. Again, can you adjust it for the audience as part of you creating trust in your solution? Hard skills, again, technical solutioning, that's something in the back of the head. Work experience. Have you done this role? Because when they ask you about how do you build the trust, remember, this is, you can answer it hypothetical, or you can answer it based on experience that you had in the past, okay? How did you build it in like real high-stake situations before? It also indicates your level of seniority. Now, that real story probably will include the situation, like maybe a skeptical or high-stakes client, your actions, have you listened, have you asked the right questions? I think empathy was mentioned here. Have they clarified their needs? Maybe what was the turning point? Because it's like building trust. So there was no trust, and then there was trust. What happened in between, right? So what was this specific trust building moment? There was always like kind of like a moment in stories, right? Maybe there was a demo, maybe there was a whiteboard session, maybe there was a proactive follow-up. Like what happened? And then the outcome, right? So you build trust. How do you know that you build trust? You don't want to say because I think so. You build trust because in the end they bought something, right? So did you close deal? Have you expanded the contract? Did you build like this long-term relationship with the clients that materialize into something for the company? Okay. So that's one way to think about this. I think there was a question mentioning how you always okay. How to explain career gap for 8 years due to my visa restriction in the US and take care of family member in an interview. If there was a personal, I would just say, just be honest about it. If there was something personal preventing you from working, just say it. And another thing, but remember this, right? The fact that you were not able to work, then okay, like, were you interested in the space? Have you done something? Have you done contract? Have you learned something? Have you done anything like that? The concern is sometimes not necessarily because people have gaps. Sometimes, stuff happens, people get sick, people go on vacation, but if you're passionate for something, then if you've done something during that time, like any proof that you have that you're actually interested in this field. And I think that that's something that you can still prove even with the gap. Someone is a new grad who might have no work, but has done decent academic projects. How do they position their story in order to make them look okay? So if you've done academic projects, that's what you have, then there's two ways to go about that. One is, I have a blog post about this, like don't have like a pet project. So what it means is like how to elevate your project to something that is a bit higher. Okay, so that's something that I recommend. The second thing is, if you've already done the project, then try to highlight the relevant areas. Okay, maybe your project was not that impressive, but maybe it shows that you care about a certain field. Okay, so if, for example, you apply to a company in that's doing I don't know, mobile app development, and you have a project with mobile app development. Okay, maybe you care about this field. It shows something. At least you care about this field enough to do a project on it. Maybe even if you don't have amazing experience, that might not be enough to get into a large company, but might be enough to get into small companies if you show them you care. Okay. So this is like a 3-step fix, like an easy fix for interview performance. Okay, I mentioned the beginning. There's going to be like, a quick fix. The quick fix is just gonna have in your mind the following. Okay, identifying the signals that hiring managers are looking for, and just focus your stories. That's all on those signals. Just highlight the things that's important for them. Okay, so your answer needs to be relevant for what people are trying to evaluate. That's basically the easy fix. So on the experience, have you done this before? That's something they want to evaluate. You are doing program management. You are doing an interview for program management. Tell me program management story that you've done the role before. That's gonna make sense. The second is soft skills. Okay, can you work in this environment? Many companies today, it's very, your role connects to many people, and it's easy to get lost. Do you have good communication? Do you have good leadership? Do you have good creativity, etc.? Okay. Hard skills. If hard skills are needed, and most tech jobs, even tech adjunct, requires hard skills. Do you understand the relevant tech, the tools, the processes? Okay. Build stories that show those signals. So when you build stories, you can do those things in advance. You want to have stories that kind of make sense for this. So use real specific examples, okay? Things that actually happened to you in the past, real examples. Anchor the stories in the skill they're trying to assess. So what it means is, let's say, program management need to be process-driven person, okay? So your story needs to highlight the process stuff that you've done, okay, as an example. One story can hit multiple rubrics if framed well. Practice those stories, but don't practice them just blindly. Don't just go and just pick up random questions for product management and just randomly answer them. Identify what's not landing, okay? Maybe you have vague answers, maybe you have unclear ownership, maybe you have missing metrics. You do a few of stories. I do it all the time, and it's very easy to find patterns. Those patterns are failures that keep on repeating in many stories. If you failed once, that's okay. Remember, when they interview you, often you have multiple chances. And even if you talk for 40-45 minutes, if you answered something incorrectly just once, then, in the grand scheme of 40 minutes, maybe that's not going to be the biggest thing. It's not great. But the problem is repeating patterns, because if you have repeating patterns, then those are the things that kind of hurt you. Rework those areas intentionally. So focus. So if you know that you have problem, for example, of you look junior, or ownership, or creativity in answer, that's the thing you're working on. Forget about the rest. Mock interviews are painful, right? I've done this in the past many times. You record yourself, you have a question, maybe record yourself, then you hear it. It's super cringe. It's difficult. But if it's focused, you need to do much less on that, and it requires less effort. Okay. A couple of questions here regarding rubrics. Is there a way to determine which is being tested? I failed an interview for not going through all the technical steps, like a story, hard skills. I thought they wanted an overview, work experience. Okay. So when there is an interview, there are a couple of ways to know that. When there is an interview, first thing, it's like maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes, 35 minutes, 30 minutes, something along those lines. So it's a significant time. If you're talking and you're not sure, you can just stop every minute, every 2 minutes, and just ask, should I go more into the details, or just keep it high level? Yeah, you can ask that if you're not sure. So that's one thing that you can do. The second thing that you can do is that misassessment of question happens a lot. And that's why I usually recommend to answer in like, when you ask a question, you answer it, that answer both on the work experience and demonstrating of what's important for the role. Not sure, it's usually in the job description. And then you can take rubrics, by the way, in some cases from the job description. It's not very difficult. You answer to try and focus on what's important in the job description. And then after maybe 2 minutes of speaking in your story, you just stop and you see what the other person is focusing on. This will give you a discussion of maybe 10 segments. Like if you're talking for 2 minutes, and it's like 20 minutes plus, beginning and end, even in the 30 minutes interview, like 10 segments. That's enough to know what this person is going. Okay, and that person has 10 different opportunities to move you in that direction. So I think that's my advice. What kind of project can be done to show relevance if I've been out of work for a year? Okay. You can always go. This is, by the way, what I tell all my students. It's actually not hard to find experience if you focus on problems. You can go to networking events. There are many people there with companies, or maybe people that you know with companies, find out problems that they have and offer to fix it for them. Okay? So I have interns. Other people have interns. Yeah. I think that small companies can always, you can always connect, and they can make decisions on the spot. What you need to show is a passion to something that would benefit them. Okay, let's continue. Can you recommend a website for mock interviews? I'm not 100% sure about all the different websites. I haven't tried them myself, but I do know that for programming question, LeetCode is considered pretty good. So if you need like just technical programming questions with patterns, then I think LeetCode is pretty good. For others, I'm not sure. Okay, let's take another example. Let's say there is a Gen AI engineer at a startup. Okay. Now, let's say that they say, tell me about yourself. And they start to say, I've been a platform manager for the past decade, with 2 decades of experience overall. I started as an engineer, then became a tech lead, and eventually the manager. I've led large app development teams in major corporation, right? So this answer by itself could work sometimes. But what is the problem? with this answer? Let's give people like 30 seconds. Yes, it's not IC role, that's correct. So one of the concerns that people will have here is that this person see themselves as like higher than that, and maybe also they're disconnected from hands-on experience, and that would be a concern. Relevance of the role, that's right. It's a Gen AI, so how does platform or app is the thing that's important here. Okay. As I mentioned, I'll publish and send also an email. I'll publish the video and also send, I'll attach the slides to it. Okay. Now, let's assume that there is a program manager, individual contributor. Okay. Now, the question is, how did you resolve conflict between the teams? And they say, I worked with teams at Intel that were in conflict with each other. I scheduled meeting with both sides to understand the underlying issues. I emphasized our shared mission and helped align everyone around a common goal. Since then, we've worked together successfully. That sounds like a perfectly fine answer, right? But what might be some issues here with this answer? Or what is the missed opportunity here? Okay, perspective other than the collaborative. Okay, what's the conflict? How did you resolve it? Yes. So there are two issues here. First, it's unclear what the conflict was. Okay, they just brought them together. And the second thing here is that program manager, remember about the rubrics. Program manager is about processes. That's what program managers do. What is the process here? I mean, yeah, just schedule a meeting with two people. But, you know, what is the process here that shows the seniority of that person? And that part is missed, right? He didn't mention any roadmap or any weekly sync or any process around this. It's just scheduled meeting. And that's a missed opportunity to demonstrate process type of thinking and structured thinking. Okay, so this is an example of an answer that appears to be quite good, but it's missing the opportunity to demonstrate a more advanced program skills. Okay. You can follow me on LinkedIn. If you have any good question, you can send me a question on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is Itay Sharfi. I mean, you can find me. There are not many people in the world with my name. Okay, let's take the example of the senior privacy engineer. Okay. How do you make sure privacy is handled well on the platform? Okay. So let's assume that somebody asks you, how do you make sure privacy is handled well on the platform? Well, there are some regulations that tell you what to do. So I assume legal will provide guidance on how to handle it. On the face of it, legal will provide guidance. And we just follow that. Maybe there's some training involved as well. Okay. What is the problem with this answer? That's right. Where's the ownership? This is a senior privacy. It gives passive. That's correct, because it's reactive. Somebody will ask me something, I'll do it. It's not very proactive. There's no examples. The answer is hypothetical. Now, if this is senior, there is an assumption they've done something about privacy in the past. Where's the example? Okay. Now, in many cases, there was an example. Just the person didn't say it. Because if they apply to senior privacy and they got an interview, probably they've done something with privacy in the past. Okay. So this is an example of a couple of questions that were not answered quite well. So let's talk about some serious interview prep, okay? When you want to run an interview prep, the first is like, write maybe 7 to 10 different stories from your experience. This is more for the behavioral side, but that's a thing I think that's maybe easiest to improve, because behavioral answers are usually answered not well just because you're not saying what's relevant for the question and the rubrics. Define 5-10 rubrics specific to the role: ownership, execution, influence. If you're not sure, then just look at the job description. Right? Map each story to at least one rubric. Try and cover them all so you can demonstrate. Okay. Generate questions dynamically. So don't try and memorize answers, because you're probably not going to get the exact same question, but practice in your head, okay, what are the things that are important for this role, and how do I highlight and answer irrelevant answers, okay? Relevant answers, that's the important part. Practice iteratively. Focus on the lowest score in rubrics. So it means that don't like just lead code yourself into infinity and then not focusing on things that actually drop you the interviews. Focus on the things that are the lowest, the weakest points. What rubrics, think about, if you're doing mock interviews, think about what rubrics did I fail to hit, or how do I fix that next time? I would say that each interview at this market might be worth $20,000 or maybe more. When you get an interview, respect the opportunity, right? Interviews at this market are gold. So it's important to respect the opportunity. So show up like it matters, okay? Now, fixing the most common rubrics gap. The first is communication. If you have communication issues, just be concise and direct. Cut the filler. If you have ownership issues, like you think you're not doing well on ownership, focus on what you did, not just what the team did. That's the easiest fix. Like, just be clear what you did and be clear how you kind of did it end to end. If your issue is results, try and include metrics of the business impact, time saved, dollar earned, technical fluency, explain the architecture, and try and speak in concretes. Give tangible examples, name the feature, release, or all the products. Now, here's a tip. If you get lost, okay? If you get lost, there's a couple of rules of thumbs that can save your interview. The first thing is the business first rule of thumb, okay? Every answer should connect to one question. What problem were you solving? So if you know which problem you were solving, then that's going to be very helpful for you to recover from any situation. Just go back to kind of the problem. Okay, so that was the problem trying to be solved. Engineers focus in many cases on how it works. Executives care about why it matters. Another way is to focus on the customer. So customer first is another very good rule of thumb. When you're unsure, try and anchor on how did I help the customer. And if you're really stuck, try and focus on what would a certain person do? What would X do? If there is a person that you know from the organization, that's very good. That's something you can focus on. And play to win, not to tie. So when you're delivering your answer, try and deliver with confidence and intent. Remember that likely thousands of people apply to this position. They're interviewing 15 of the strongest, so just doing okay is not going to land you the job. Again, smaller companies might be hundreds, but the numbers are very large. You have to play to win. If you need more help, if you want help with interview prep, I have a couple of options where I help people. I have an affordable job landing program. You can read about it at applicationowl.com/program. I also developed together with a team an innovative an AI tool. It's currently in alpha. You can apply to it through applicationowl.com/alpha. And if you want more job landing tips, you're welcome to follow me on LinkedIn. I am Itay Sharfi over there. I also have a YouTube where I'm going to post this video. I forgot to put the link, but Itay Sharfi again, youtube.com /Itay Sharfi. And I have time maybe for one more. I have 1 more minute, so I'll take maybe one more question. I feel by going through Amazon's LPs and mapping your stories to some of the principles, it would certainly help to cover your storytelling in an overall sense, right? Not sure that I maybe fully understand the answer, but LPs is like the leadership principles. They have 12 leadership principles. And yes, leadership is one of the important rubrics. It's not the only rubric, it's one of them. And inside there is maybe other rubrics, like the fact that you care about customer. So yes, when there is a senior, leadership is assumed. When there is no senior, it's still good to show leadership. Okay, I have time, maybe 1 more minute for a question. What are some good, meaningful follow-up questions you should ask? You should be asking when it's time for you to ask questions. Okay, so don't ask questions that you can just find out over the internet. Ask questions that are relevant for the person that's interviewing you and relevant for the fact that you want this role. So I'll give you an example. Let's say if it's program management, right? So you can say, okay, like what is going to be the oh, I see that this is a new program management function in this org. What's going to be the most important thing to achieve in the first 6 months or 12 months? Focusing on kind of like job readiness, like you want to get into the job. Okay, let's say I'm coming in. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to focus on? Is always, I think, an easy bet. Okay, what's kind of next for us? Can you please share the presentation? I said it's going to be on the YouTube channel. I'm going to upload it. I need to clean it a bit, some stuff. Interview questions for the final round. Not sure I fully understand the question. Okay, we are at time. Thank you for joining. I hope you found it useful. I'll publish the video and publish the slides. And most importantly, remember, there is no like, it's not magic, it's preparing. Be sure to understand what you've been evaluated on, keep it in your head, and just answer relevant questions. There is really no need to make up anything, tell the truth. Just keep in your mind kind of what's relevant for my answer. Just kind of focus on that. Okay. Thank you very much for joining. Appreciate you coming. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye.